Welcome to the What If podcast, and my name is Nonzigelelo. Today I'm joined by Tendai, and we are looking at the NGO of the future. If you watched the previous episode, we spoke about one of those NGOs and what they look like, and that was a membership-based NGO. Tendai, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Have you gotten any new thoughts around the membership thing you'd like to add?
No, just that I have energy today. So I think
let's go for it.
Yeah, maybe it's the coffee. But I think the first one we discussed, this membership-based entity, we actually want to kick it out of imagining it as an NGO, to take it back to its place as an association of common interest, as a union around common interest, addressing grievances of members. So we want to kick it out of the framing of NGOs to say it was a contradiction. It was not supposed to be considered as an NGO. It inserted itself because of the benefits of donor funding. Right. But it should stay where it is, because we need associations that address member concerns. We need unions. So we kick it out of that conversation. We say stays there. That's the renewing. That's the future. Go back to being an association. Go back to being a union. Raise money from your members. Raise money from well-wishers around you. But don't be driven by donor agendas.
Just a question for clarity. I would like to assume, but you know better than I do, that they are NGOs that do have members who might not have started with the route of being an association or a trade union. What happens with those? Do we still call them membership-based NGOs, or what do we do with that?
So that's where we're going today. We're going to talk about them as community-embedded NGOs. These are organizations that have an organic link with a specific community. It could be a community of people with a certain disability, a community of people with a certain interest, common interest, etc. And yes, you're right. The initial entity could have started without them as members, but over time, because of servicing their interests, these people become interested beneficiaries to a point that they have a stake. Normally, the language we use in NGOs is the stakeholders.
Right.
Yeah, but still, stakeholders are people who have a say or who are interested in the affairs of the organization. So those are so we can call it a community-embedded or a stakeholder-led or driven organization. Slightly different from the one we discussed in the previous episode, whereby that one starts off by having members. Members coming together to say we need an association to address prices of groundnuts. Right. We are not getting a fair price. We are groundnut producers. So it's called the Groundnut Producers Association of Makoni District. Then you go on, and as you grow on, then you begin to say, oh, we could do with an advocacy. We don't know how to do advocacy. You get an advocacy person. Oh, we could do this. Before you know it, you're disciplined around a certain framing around securing funding. Then that's why we're saying that many of them then lost the way. Then they became focused on the funding. They even set up their secretariats to align with the funding model. So they set up boards, they set up all these structures that were actually at odds with what communities expected, and communities found themselves struggling to access their own association in terms of the secretariat. So those ones are different. So for me, my prescription for those is, let's go back to original settings. Let's be associations again. Let's be unions again. And the merger comes in. If there's a groundnut growers association in Makoni and another one in Rusape, why can't you merge? Because all of you are interested in fair prices for your groundnuts. You're interested in good agronomic practices. Why don't you merge? So that one is fine. But the challenge is what we are calling today, this discussion that you have started to say, what is the NGO of the future? Right. And I think in the paper that you've been making reference to, I speak of community-embedded organizations.
Can I pause you there for a second, just to give people context of where we are? So we are talking about the NGO of the future, and what he's just discussed or reiterated was the membership-based one, which most of them, so it seems, might have started from what you've explained. So there are 4 of these that you've written about in the paper, the NGO of the future. So I'm just going to name them so people can just follow with us. So the first one was the membership one.
Yeah.
The second one is the community-led.
Yeah.
The next one is remind me, society.
No, it's the revenue earning.
Revenue earning. And then the last one is the hybrid.
The hybrid, yes.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
So can you just explain the last 3 that you haven't
So the community embedded is the one that starts off establishing networks, stakeholders, the people who are benefiting from it. So we always say, when we're doing evaluations of NGOs, we always ask this question, and it sounds so dramatic. We say, who will mourn for you when you die? What we're trying to do is we're trying to map constituencies of beneficiaries, people who are benefiting, people who actually will give a testimony to say, if it had not been for organization X, my kids would not have gone to school. If it had not been for organization X, in that year of hunger, we would have probably perished. So these are people that initially may look like just as passive beneficiaries, but they began to come to a place whereby they're actively interested in your survival, on how you engage them. So if you are utilizing participatory methods of agenda setting, developing what you're doing, you become more embedded in communities, and communities begin to feel like these people really care about us. These people hear us. We told them we want this and they did this. These are unicorns, by the way. They are rare to find. But when they are there, they cease to be just this little secretariat with its board. Everyone recognizes. And if you were to say, where I come from, these are organizations who would say we're having a big meeting on such a date. They would ask the parents to bring food. People will bring their own goats. People will bring their own meal for that kind of meeting to happen. So when you have that kind of relationship with the community, we call you a community embedded organization. You are recognized as part of the community.
So could I say, because we deal with community foundations in the work that we do, are community-led organizations community foundations, or is there a difference between those
There's
two?
a difference. A community-embedded organization, it's not imperative for it to raise money from the community. For now, it's an NGO. It's probably still raising money from donors. But in terms of its methodologies, in terms of its approaches and practices, it is driven by the community. It is led by what communities want, and it is doing that. While it's a community foundation, it's also established by a community, but half the time it's also funded by the community. So that's the difference. And normally what you find within a community-embedded NGO is still a single-purpose organization. While these community foundations tend to be multi-focused, they respond to a number of various needs within the community. While it's a community-embedded organization, can just be solving one problem, problem of adolescence, could be solving problem with sexual and reproductive health, could be solving problems to do with water, quality of water. But its methods make the people accept it as part of their own.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next one, which is the revenue earning.
The revenue earning. So this one is for intermediary NGOs that for years, even they may be in establishment for 20 more years, but they have never really seen the rationale to have members. They have never had the rationale, even in terms to be community embedded, because maybe they work on a vast scale. They are national in orientation. So these are normally what we call maybe not necessarily material services, but they deliver service. They're engaged maybe in advocacy. They work in human rights defense, etc., etc. But for their survival, they're not going to go to a community and say, oh, we need your help. Can you help us survive? Their survival is to begin to say, how do they monetize what they are doing? How do they monetize their products? So if you're running a legal clinic, you are an organization of human rights lawyers, you run a legal clinic for workers at the bottom of the pyramid, low-income workers who cannot afford to go and get a mainstream lawyer. But maybe for years you've been running that service at zero cost because there's been a donor who's been offsetting the cost. What if you thought of introducing minimal cost, just cost recovery, to say where a mainstream lawyer would charge for their services, they'll charge you $200. We're not going to charge you $200, but we'll charge you $40. And we may charge at the point where you win your case. So they monetize their product to say, you've been unfairly dismissed. We just need you to sign an agreement that when we win your case, you're going to pay us $40 or $50. And that goes towards the long-term survival of the organization.
Right. So would you name that a social enterprise when it takes on?
Yeah, I'll get there.
Aspect?
I'll get there. So there are two methods. So that's because when we talk about social entrepreneurship, many people begin to say, oh, but we don't want to establish a separate business. But we're saying within the suite of products that you're providing, you can begin to monetize those which produce publications. You know, I was very cheeky. When I was writing this report, I then said, you can actually charge for reports. And I said,
like
such
this
as this one.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, you saw that, right? So what we're saying is many think tanks, think tank-like organizations that produce knowledge are producing that knowledge completely for free. Yeah? But what if they were to charge $1, $2 for anyone who downloads, just for their survival? It's not compulsory. I subscribe to The Guardian. It's a UK-based newspaper. It's one of the best, I think. And at the moment, if you go to their website, they say, we're not funded by any tycoon, by any businessman. We have not sold out to whatever political agendas that exist. But for our survival, we need your support. They're not going to stop you if you don't click to subscribe. You can continue to see their articles, etc., and to continue reading. But if you're really interested, as little as £5, as little as $5, you can donate. That's the idea. You're monetizing your products, but you're not monetizing them in a commercial way to say that if you don't subscribe, you cannot open this article. It's only for subscribers only. But you are finding a way of doing that. So that's knowledge products, that's your services, that's trainings. If you're offering training, where you are offering training for journalists to report on certain things, now you begin to say, okay, maybe you're coming from a media house anyway.
Yeah.
What if you contributed? Normally, if you were to travel for this course at a university, they will charge you so much, but we are charging you this. It's a cost recovery method. So I think we need to start conversations around cost recovery. So that's the revenue earning model. Then the others will say that of the things we do, there's very limited monetization, which I struggle to understand. But many others would say that those are the ones that we begin to encourage to say, why don't you look for something you can invest in as a business? So you can invest in, if you're on your building already, you probably don't need certain parts of your building every day. Probably you don't need your boardroom every day. What if you advertise to say, if the organizations that would like to have a board meeting, we have a big boardroom, you want to train, you can use our boardroom. For some costs, you recover certain costs, or you begin to do something with your offices, cost sharing, etc., etc. Those are models around cost recovery and earning an income. Then for others that have significantly larger reserves, we find in organizations, not only in Africa, but even globally, that also invest in stock markets. They're trading, they're doing stuff, etc. But for those that are involved in service delivery, in the rural areas around maybe delivery of new agronomic practices, half the time they were doing this for free. Yeah. Half the time they were going there to train farmers on how to grow a certain crop in a certain way. But we're saying, what if you had an agreement that as we help you to access markets, you can give us 10% of what you sell for our survival so that we can come back next year to train you? Because I think so the most important thing is about you have to be authentic to the people you are discussing. You have to explain to them why you are changing your model. That takes time. It's attention. For people who are used to getting things for free, if people were used to go to a clinic that is run by an NGO and they were getting everything for free, and all of a sudden we're saying, oh, now to see the doctor here, maybe you need to pay $5.
The attitude,
etc., may change. Yeah. But you need to explain why. To say, oh, we used to have a big funder, but that funder is pulled off. If we don't do this, next year we will not be here. But you need this resource as a community. So we really need to have difficult conversations. But those difficult conversations normally lead to long-term sustainability. I always say, even families that can't have discussions amongst themselves around changing fortunes tend to struggle in the long run. So you need to confront this challenge that you are facing to say, we have a money problem, how do we fix it?
Right.
So yes, in a nutshell, the things I've described can be put in a box that you call a social enterprise posture, right, where you are recovering, or there's some level of cost recovery. Even when you are selling something, you're not selling as a for-profit entity. You are not doing, your cost margins are not as crazy as what we see in the private sector. You can even open a store. Oxfam has a store, second-hand store, etc., etc. Many donors, the Salvation Army has been doing this for years, etc. Many others have been doing this to say, we actually have a second-hand store where you can come and buy, and the proceeds are used to support our activities. So these are the things that we really need to start thinking about, because many people are stuck in this saying, so what happens? Donors are gone. Let's look for new donors. What if there are no other new donors that can cover that gap?
Right. So let's move to the last one, which was the hybrids.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Is it a hybrid of all three that you've mentioned prior to this one that we're going to discuss? Is it a hybrid of one or two? What does it look like?
So a hybridity does not mean you are going to have everything in the same organization. You may choose two elements. You may choose to say we are community embedded, but it's not enough. We are actually going to also take a social enterprise posture. Or you may say that we want to remain as a tradition. So for all these, I'm not saying to any of these organizations, stop fundraising.
Right.
I'm saying find a way of complementing the funds that you're raising, because we are seeing many studies we have carried out, the surveys we have carried out, the giving is not going up, sort of what you're raising in terms of fundraising, slowly coming down. But to say, how do you cover that gap? So that's why we're talking about all these mechanisms. So the first thing that you have to do is, and I say this may sound like, oh, he's contradicting himself. Strengthen your fundraising capabilities.
Right.
Because fundraising has become competitive, where you're writing a proposal with the assurance that you'll get funding. Now you are not assured. So write a compelling proposal. Develop methods of looking, web crawling methods to look for funding opportunities. Make sure that you are writing more proposals than you were, because I think the conversion rate is going to change. You need to now write more proposals to secure grants. So do that. Don't stop doing that. Yeah. Then number two, find ways of complementing funding, because the challenge with the funding that we're getting anyway is funding that is tied to projects.
Right.
So we're struggling with funding to do with lights, funding to do with salaries for non-core stuff, communications, stuff like this we're doing. There are very few funders who say, oh, I love your blog, I love your podcast, I'm going to fund it. There are very few funders who do that. So for you to do all those extra things that help you achieve visibility, you need to raise your own money. So for you to raise money, those are the methods. So your hybridity is going to be number one. You retain your fundraising strategy and you continue enhancing that, making sure that you are at the top of fundraising. So all the skills, all the training opportunities that you can avail for yourself, go and do those. But then begin to learn also about social entrepreneurship. Begin to learn about how to monetize products. Begin to learn about how to invest money that you have. Many organizations can sit for close to 12 months in their current account with a certain amount of money they don't need. And this can be 100,000, can be 50,000, 150,000. It's money that is not earning any interest. Actually, you're being charged by the bank every month.
Every month.
So you actually need to have a relationship with short-term investment firms, private equity firms, so that they can teach you, but they can help you to unlock value based on the monies that you have. But I think for you to do all these changes, get your board on board quickly. So I am hoping that as we are having this conversation here and it's April, I'm hoping that many organizations have already at their board meetings to discuss this issue and to begin to say to the board, we may need new policies. So you may need an investment committee within your organization to help you to say, if you're going to be sitting with funds that you currently do not need in the first half of the year, where can you put them and they can earn you something? What can you do that is low risk that assures you of getting money? So all those things are becoming essential. So our levels of financial literacy or investment literacy have just increased. For instance, we just used to hire somebody saying, you got a finance degree, you got an accounting degree, you can help us balance the books. But we need more skills now. We need better skills in terms of how to manage non-profit money. It's no longer just about writing a report. It's about saying, am I attaining value for money? What of this money can I invest somewhere else? What of this money can I... Even our purchasing methods have to be different.
Right.
Because remember, we've been trained by many donors to spend down on budgets. But now we're beginning to make the argument even to donors, allow us to save for our future, because we don't know for how long you'll be with us. So when you begin to take that, you're actually taking a social enterprise posture. Because many people assume that social entrepreneurship has to do with coming up with a new entrepreneurial venture. But we're actually saying, be entrepreneurial in how you manage existing resources.
And what does that look like, Tendai? Can I just
Being
pause there?
entrepreneurial with your resources is number one, manage costs within the organization. Is just keep on asking yourself this question: do I need to spend this money? How better else could I spend this money? Is there a better way of doing this event? For so many, if you ask hoteliers in this country, in many other countries, we're their favorite customers. Because for any excuse, we're rushing to a hotel to book to have a meeting. At times, we can actually have those online and they can work better. But so we need to rethink certain things, because a meeting at a hotel one day can cost as much as 7,000. But a Zoom call over 90 minutes can cost us $45 or less. And we can achieve the same objectives as long as we're investing in the right equipment. Make sure you've got good internet. That's being entrepreneurial. So instead of investing in going for a dialogue at a hotel, what if you use some of those resources to do a once-off investment in good internet, good Wi-Fi, so that you can make sure that you can have good discussions, etc., microphones, etc. So you begin to rethink how you've been doing things, to say, where have we been leaking? I always have this challenge with my finance team to say, are you sure? It says, there's no more else. There's nowhere else. I said, if you've gone into programs and looked at things that they are doing, that you could help them to cut down on their costs. Because when we started, we made sure that even the way we handled our surveys, because we're told that to carry out a nationwide survey in a small country like Zimbabwe with 10 provinces, you need north of 60,000. Because the budgets where you had to hire cars, 4x4s, you had to hire people,
accommodation,
stay in accommodation, etc. Then I said, no, what if we thought of just using local resources? Because every province has got a state university.
Right.
What if we spoke to graduates from those universities and train them, not by bringing them to Harare, but train them via Zoom on how to use the survey tool and get. So we radically reduced the cost of doing a nationwide survey. Where others were talking of cost north of 30K, we brought it down to 6,000. And we were unpopular for a while because donors were now beginning to like our model, to say, these ones can do a survey without hiring cars, without doing this, by just using local resources and technology. Because we're using software where somebody carrying out a research who could tell by the geomapping
where they are,
where exactly
what time they did it,
what time they've done the survey, and we could receive it, and we could make online corrections to say, we think you didn't ask this question properly. Can you go back to this respondent and properly fix it? Best in Harare, but with people all over. And it took us 3-4 days to carry out a nationwide survey. So I think those are the things when I say be entrepreneurial with money. Look at ways in which you can save. That's one. And look at what to do with money. Just don't keep money in a current account. Go and talk to your bank. Say you're not happy with you just seeing costs instead of seeing benefits. What else can you do with your money? Where else can you put it? What else can you do? So the question now is around equipment. Do you hire or do you buy equipment?
Right.
We looked at the hiring model. It was costly. For everything wanted to record, wanted to do. Hiring, by the time you record the 6th episode, you've actually paid for a camera.
That is true.
So we decided to say we're going to buy our own equipment. So the initial cost looks high, but over time, spread over time, it works out cheaper. So those are the things we now need in nonprofits. People who can manage costs, not people who are just tracking and recording
and
costs.
People who are innovative. Absolutely.
Highly innovative.
So I might be putting you in a bit of a corner. From the 4, actually, let me do away with number 4, the hybrid, because it includes these 3.
Yeah.
And then maybe we also kind of did away with number 1.
Yeah.
Because we're saying they should go back to their original model. So
they shouldn't be an NGO.
So between the 2,
the
community-led and the
revenue
earning one, which one would you advise for someone to go for long-term sustainability?
Depends with the kind of organization you are. If you're an organization, a CBO, an organization working with communities, invest in being community embedded, because the community will sustain you, will save you. We're not saying the community is going to come and replace grants, but the community may help you cut down on costs. So you may actually find now you're having meetings and the community is bringing what is required for that meeting to be a success. So that's number 1. But if you are an intermediary NGO engaged in things like governance, policy analysis, and advocacy, it's going to be difficult for you to be embedded in any community. But you have no choice but you have to think about, how do you earn a revenue? How do you monetize some products? How do you reduce operating costs? Because really cutting the fat in organizations is possible. So for us, there was a year that we just decided that the executive director is not traveling as much as he used to do. I didn't travel for 12 months. The savings that we made from that year were huge. We're able to buy a property.
So there's a need for sacrifice at some
So there's certain things that you begin to say, am I really going to add value to this meeting I've been invited to? Of what strategic input can I make into? So half the time, at some point, we're just flying all over. We're not questioning every meeting to say, what am I going to gain? Of what value is this to myself and the organization I represent? Or I'm just going to make up the numbers. When you begin to think like that, you actually realize to say, you can now say no to many things. Because the power of saying no is very important. And you should give that power to your finance team that they can say no to many crazy ideas coming from programs people. So they can say no.
I'm
we
a
can't
programs person. I'm very offended. I'm just joking.
Yeah, we understand. You guys want to achieve your goals, you want to achieve your objectives, but finance in the long run should be invested in sustainability. If finance is not asking questions and is not saying no to many things that you're presenting, I have a problem with that
finance team. Okay, so just to close this off, what is one case study around the NGO of the future, which is existing now, more so for me, the revenue earning one? Do you know of any that is outstanding?
I know of one, and it's they're actually going to do their masterclass in the next 2 weeks. It's called the Zimbabwe Project Trust. The Zimbabwe Project Trust, you won't believe it, owns a college here in Zimbabwe called Trust Academy. It's owned by a non-profit. They own Trust Academy. They also own what we call Adelaide Acres. There's a big GOT project there on your way to Masvingo. So they've been in existence for close to 35 years or more, and they've been doing their things under the radar. But given the challenges we're now facing with funding, they are becoming a model that many people are gravitating towards. But you don't wake up overnight and have a property. So you have to invest or you have to create savings towards a property. Yeah. So many of us, when we're looking at Zim Project Trust and we're looking at it saying, oh, can we get there? The challenge is we are trying to rush towards where they are, but it's a journey that has taken them. I've known them since the early 2000s, but they were in existence even before then. And they've been working quietly, setting this up. So I always tell the colleagues there, say, you guys don't tell your story. Because if they told their story, they could even positively impact on others who are thinking of this journey. Yeah? The colleagues at Zimbabwe Environmental Lawyers Association are also on this journey. They've got a building. They're trying to set up something that will be a venue of sorts, etc., etc. So there are many organizations that are thinking around this. The challenge is when I talk about the ones that are doing things at a large scale, the ones that don't have reserves, they say, oh, it's only for those with money. But we are saying that this can be done at many levels. So I always encourage to say, start off by cutting the fat in your organization. That's number one. And number two, monetizing your products. Number three, where possible, make sure you got some savings targets. Number four, offer your services. That's one thing that I didn't mention. One of the biggest income earners at Seville Institute has been our advisory work. We have a separate division that is called Seville Advisory. Through that advisory, we're able in the formative years to fund close to 25% of our operational budget. It sounded good at that moment, but I'm beginning to kick myself in the foot why I did that. I should have kept those earnings from advisory because those were unrestricted funds. It was our own income. We should have used those resources to build property, to buy property, because they were huge. Yeah, but I hope new opportunities come. So many organizations, because when I say that, they say, we can't be consultants like you. But I say, if you are doing something, that means you're good at that, and others want to know what you're doing. That's an advisor opportunity. So there are certain places where you actually go in because you realize that they have resources, you charge. Non-profits that they are challenged, they can't charge for their services, but find a way of making sure that you actually charge for your services and use those resources wisely, not to then pay for your lights, etc. Use them for your long-term savings. So those are the kinds of sort of initial steps. But I think the message is the game has shifted, the landscape has shifted. We have no choice but to rethink how we've been working.
So the common thread throughout the sessions that we've had discussing the future of the NGO, I think for me, what I've picked up is agility.
Yeah.
The second one being innovation.
Yeah.
And I think the last one that's kind of stood out for me is sacrifice.
Yeah, and also
what are your
asset best. I would add asset best.
Yeah,
sacrifice, I agree. That's why at the beginning I spoke about this space as a passion space, value space. You do not come to work in an NGO because you're looking for a good salary. Good salaries are in the private sector, maybe government, for some with working governments, and maybe multilateral agencies. Normally in the NGO, traditionally, it's always been people who are driven by passion, who are convicted to be agents of change. Then they join an organization that aligns with their values. So we tend to be values-driven people more than money-driven people. So the sacrifice is there. You're making a sacrifice. You're actually having this compact to say, you know what, despite all these skills I have, I may not match my colleagues who are going maybe into a commercial consulting firm or into a bank. I'm going to maybe modestly earn something, but I'll not die because I'm convinced that this is what I want to do with my life. So it could be purpose-driven spaces that we're talking about. So if you look at that, then sacrifice definitely. Then the agility one is very important because at the beginning you asked me which organizations would survive. You can't be agile and have large bureaucracies. So it becomes difficult because decisions have to be made in real time. But large-scale organizations that we saw being a product of official development aid, USAID and many others, are the ones that are going to struggle. Because for them to reinvent themselves, they have to cut the fat around who's in the C-suite, who's in the executive suite, who's running their affairs, who makes decisions. Because in organizations like ours, I just have to find a way of saying to the board, within 48 hours, can I meet with you? This is the situation. After that, securing board approval, I'm coming to the organization. So we can implement issues just like that. Yeah. But many entities struggle with how they move from an idea to a decision that is enforced, that is implemented. Yeah.
Tendai, thank you for your thoughts today and for breaking down the future of NGO. Right. So if you'd like to see that paper, you can find it at www.cvoinstitute.org. There's something that you mentioned that when we're discussing, which reminds me of a course that's coming out on Udemy around individual giving. You spoke about board members and the role that they play. And they need to be active. And we speak about that in the Udemy course. So if you are intrigued by that idea, I dare you to go and take a look at our Udemy course. If you want to find out more, go on our website. You can get our contact details there. My name is Nonzegele Lonzula. Thank you again for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed the series. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.